Okay. But as you know that the name of the OSI layer is what? Open System Interconnect, developed by
Right.
ISO. Okay. So my question is, what would be the need of OSI layers?
What would be the need? So we have standardization, we
Okay.
have interoperability
Okay.
between network devices.
Exactly. If you see the earlier days of networking, multi-vendor product cannot be interconnected together because every vendor they had their own set of protocols or rules and regulations they were following for pushing the traffic from one interface to another interface. The networking was possible, but the problem was what? Interoperability. So
Right.
IEEE worried about this and they requested ISO to develop a standard so that the interoperability would be possible and they can ease the process of moving the traffic from one application, one of the system to the other system. So that's where they developed the OSI layer, right? So you must be knowing about it. What is that called? Your OSI layer has 7 layers of it.
Right.
My question is why 7 layers? Okay, first of all, the first question would be why layered approach and why they have gone for 7 layers.
So that we have ease of troubleshooting. Like we can segregate the issue. Like if it is layer one issue or layer two issue, like it can be physical layer issue or it can be an issue with layer two, like data link that has frame or any switching device. Or if you have layer three, it can be routing issue or anything related to when it comes to hardware, it can be routers.
Uh-huh. Okay. Let me give you a small example of this so that it would be very clear why they have gone for layered approach. Okay.
Okay.
Now, I have a support team. This is my
Mhm.
help desk.
Mhm.
I have level 1 engineers. I have level 2 engineers. I also have level 3 engineers. Apart from that, they will also be having a manager. Right?
Mhm.
Why they have gone for this sort of classification? Level 1 engineer, level 2 engineer, and level 3 engineer.
So they support different issue resolution.
Exactly. So something like if I have, if I'm receiving a ticket from my customer, that could be identified as a priority based tickets. It could be level 1 priority or priority 1 ticket or priority 2 ticket. It could be possible to be identified. Similarly, the level of knowledge required to troubleshoot those kind of tickets would be different. Certain
Okay.
tickets you need a high level of knowledge, certain tickets you may be doing some basic knowledge itself enough for troubleshooting those issues. So what I'm trying to do, depending on the criticality of the issue, the ticket will be forwarded to the either level 1 engineer or level 2 engineer or level 3 engineers.
Mhm.
Right. If in case something is not happening, so if the level 1 engineer is not able to troubleshoot the ticket, it could be escalated to level 2 engineer.
Correct.
Similarly, if level 2 engineers can't troubleshoot any of the ticket, it could be escalated to level 3 engineers. So manager is there to take care of the workflow of all those engineers,
Mhm.
right? So if I don't have this kind of a segregation of level 1, level 2, level 3 engineer, how do I recruit it? Because the problem is if I'm going to have all of them as level 3 engineers, the cost of recruiting engineer would be high. Similarly, not all the tickets are high priority tickets. So probably some 5% of the tickets or 10% of the tickets what you are receiving would be priority 1 tickets, or deep level of knowledge or high level of knowledge would be required for troubleshooting that. So if instead of going for all my engineers of a shift to be L3 engineers, if I could recruit level 1 engineers and level 2 engineers, the cost will be lesser for me and managing them would be easy by the manager as well. Okay, level one engineer handle these kind of you can start defining the roles. Okay, level 1 engineer, this is your role. Level 2 engineer, this is your role. And level 3 engineer, this would be your role. So manager would be, it would be easy job for a manager to manage all this kind of different category of engineers.
Right.
So I have a defined expectation for each and every level. Level 1 engineer, this is the knowledge, this is the kind of work that you will be carrying out every day.
Right.
So by going for a layered approach, you know where this ticket has to be distributed. There is a limitation for level 1 engineer, there is a limitation for level 2 engineer, there is also some sort of limitation for level 3 engineers, what they can do, what they can't do.
Correct.
So I have a clear separation of role, I also have a clear separation of responsibility. So the manager would be happy enough to identify who is working on this and what he was doing, what is the expectation set for those engineers. And it would be easy for him to identify the performance of each and every level of engineers.
Right.
So that is the same kind of an approach I'm going for, a layered approach. That means you could also take another example. Probably you might be having some experiences on doing some sort of programming during your degree program or something like that. Probably can take the help of, you have any programming knowledge, Zubair?
Yes, like from university days.
Okay. So what is the language that you are working with?
I did Java and C++.
Oh, okay. Fine. So let's take a
I
small.
remember nothing about it, so
Even I don't know anything about it. So don't worry. I will not be asking any questions related to programming. So no worries on that. So the
but
point.
maybe like some words from those languages, like the topics that I studied, maybe.
Okay. Just an example here. Let me say that the application what I'm using is Microsoft Paint.
Okay.
So if I'm going to click file, certain options are coming up, correct?
Right.
So I have new, I have open, I have save as, print, all of them.
Right.
Assuming that you have written all the program, so all the code as a single program. So you're writing scripts over here, you're writing the programs here, okay? There is a problem in open. Assume that, so it is not that the moment you have written the code, it could be executed as an application. So first of all, once you have done with the coding, then you have to compile it. Once the compilation is done, only then you will be able to get the application as an exe file.
Correct.
So my point is, you have started writing the program for each and every option that you are seeing here. For clicking file, what has to be. For when a user is clicking new, what it has to be doing. Right?
Yeah.
If somewhere in the middle something is not working, I'm trying to click file and open, it is throwing an error. Obviously, the program has to be corrected by the programmer. Once the correction is done, he has to compile it. When the compilation is going on, he has to compile the whole program, not the changes what he has made. So instead of this, what I'm going to be doing is, so I'm just going to compartmentalize this program. Okay, I have a huge program called as what? MS Paint. Inside that, I'm just going to be creating small portions of it. Okay, this is going to be one module, and this is going to be in another module, and this is going to be in another module. Like that, I'm going to be creating multiple modules. So every module is responsible for what? Certain functionalities. Let me say this is going to be new, and this is going to be open, and this is going to be save, and this is going to be save as, something like that. Okay. Now, if there is a problem in any section of it, any particular section of it, it would be easy to go and identify where the problem is. Okay, when I'm clicked open, it thrown me an error. So I just need to go and identify what problem is there in the open section. I don't need to worry about any of these things. So it will be easy for you to identify and isolate where the problem is. So troubleshooting would be too easy. At the same time, once you have done all the corrections, you are going to compile only this module. You don't need to compile any of these modules.
Right.
So in this way, when you do this kind of a module based programming, it will be helping a programmer to identify the problem, and once the problem has been identified, correct it and compile only that respective module, and then that's it, over. Everything will be easy for programmer as well.
Right.
So this is the kind of an approach we are also doing in networking. Right? So because the process is going to be different. We have multiple devices, they have to be exchanging this information. The information is going to be shared by one of the device. So somebody is requesting and somebody is going to be transmitting. It is a huge process. I don't want to do as a single layered one. So I would like to go for multi-layer. I would like to distribute the responsibility to multiple people so that they will be responsible. They will be able to take care the job what they have been meant for. So it also helps the network administrator to identify where the problem is. Right? So if someone has to develop a protocol for a specific functionality, they can understand this is responsibility of layer 2. So I have to write a protocol only to layer 2. If I'm going to develop a device, a manufacturer device which is going to be acting at layer 2, I just need to worry about only the layer 1 and layer 2.
Right.
So that's the idea behind your layered approach. The question is, the next question what I asked, why they have gone for 7 layers? Is there any reason to it?
I'm not sure about it.
Okay, so actually speaking, this OSA layer, when they were developing it, they took DoD as a reference. DoD model or TCP/IP, whatever it might be, TCP/IP model. They had already a model, which is called as a TCP/IP model. It had 4 layers. So since OSI was developed based on TCP/IP model, they took TCP/IP model as a reference while they were developing it. So in TCP/IP they had 4 models actually, 4 layers actually. In TCP/IP model they had 4 layers. So we know why they have gone for layered approach, and now let's try to understand what are all the layers and all. Okay, so they named it as so they called it as application, host to host, internet, and network access. This is what the layer they have given a name for it. So they have distributed the responsibilities to 4 different people so that they can take care of those things. When OSI was developed, they took this model as a reference. They felt that the application layer of TCP/IP model was huge and it cannot be handled by a single person. So that's why they did. We would like to go for 3 different people to take care of this application layer of TCP/IP model. So they named it as what? Okay, application, presentation, and session. So application, presentation, and session layer of OSI model corresponds to application layer of TCP/IP model.
Right.
So host to host, they felt that it is more than enough to have one single person to take care of the jobs or responsibilities of the host to host model, but they renamed it as transport layer. So your host to host layer of TCP/IP model corresponds to the transport layer of OSI model. So internet, again, it is only one single layer. They felt it internet layer can be as a one single layer in OSI layer also, but they just renamed it as network layer. But again, the network access layer of TCP/IP model, OSI has sliced that into 2 different layers. One is data link and other one is physical layer. So application, presentation, session layers of OSI corresponds to application layer of TCP/IP model. Transport layer corresponds to host to host. network layer corresponds to internet, whereas data link and physical layer of OSL layer corresponds to network access layer of TCP/IP model. Right? So this is the reason they have 7 layers. So host to host corresponds to transport, internet, network layer, but rest of the 2 layers of TCP/IP model, when OSA was developed, the developers was felt that this is a huge layer. We need to have more number of people to take care of that functionality or the responsibility. So I would like to further slice this layer into 2 or 3. Similarly, so every layer has been assigned with some responsibilities. Let's start doing one by one.
Sir, are you recording the session or?
I'm recording through Camtasia,
Okay.
but your voice wouldn't be audible. Is that okay, or you would like to go for?
Yeah, that's fine. I don't want to hear my voice.
No, your voice wouldn't be recorded.
Okay.
Is that okay, or you want to record your voice also?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
Because you are the one giving informative knowledge, right?
No,
I'm
but-
just saying yes or no.
But anyway, the questions you are asking that you must be aware of it, right?
Right.
Anyway, fine. Good. Okay. Now let's take the case of, okay, they have named these things as layer 1. Which one? The physical layer as considered as layer 1. And similarly, this is my layer 2, and this is layer 3, and this is layer 4, this is layer 5, layer 6, and layer 7. So the first layer is considered as a physical layer. Again, the question is, why not application layer can be called as layer 1? It could be, right? Why they are not calling application layer as layer 1? Instead of that, they were calling physical layer as layer 1.
Not sure.
Okay. So probably, so I'm just giving you a small reason for that. That's it. It doesn't mean that it has to be like the same way. Okay, let's say that. What is the purpose of this OSL layer? It is meant for data communication. It is meant for networking, right?
Right.
When it comes to networking, I'm just thinking from my receiver's perspective. So I'm just thinking of the data is being seen on the medium. The first visible layer on the medium would be what? Physical layer.
Physical layer, right?
So that's the reason they were started saying that physical layer is a layer 1.
Okay.
Right? Okay. Now, every layer has certain responsibilities on it. So let's start working with what? Application layer. What is the main responsibility of application layer?
Like the functionality of a particular application.
I'm sorry? Applications. What applications main functionality on that? So physical layer is not at all aware of what application it is meant for.
Application layer like
No. I'm talking about the layer 1. So that's the reason. So you would have corrected me. Layer 1 is what?
physical layer.
Physical layer. What is the main responsibility of layer 1, which is physical layer?
Carrying data from one point to the other
How physical layer can carry data?
through physical medium.
No. Is there any carrier to carry the
Electrical
data?
signals, right?
Is there any carrier to carry the data on the physical layer?
Didn't get your question. Sorry.
No. So what is the main responsibility of the physical layer? That was my question. You were saying that it is responsible for carrying data from one machine to another or one place to another place.
Like, or it provides a medium for the for the data to move from one end to another end. It provides a medium.
That's correct. Let's say that. So the main responsibility of the physical layer says that if any of two devices would talk to each other, first of all, they have to be connected physically. That's the main responsibility of physical layer. So the connection could be bound or unbound. That doesn't matter. So before any two systems could talk to each other, they have to be connected physically. The connection could be bound or unbound. It could be a wired connection or it could be a wireless connection. It doesn't matter. Okay. Take an example. If we have to do the class, what are the possible choices? You are attending a class, right? You are attending a class. What is the possible choice? You can come physically to the classroom.
Right.
Then we can do the class. Is that the way we are doing it? No, we are doing online. So you were asking for some meeting invite. Why you were asking for it? Just like that I can sit in my room, I can shout. Similarly, you can sit at your home and then you can listen.
Right.
Then why we have gone for it? Because the audio whatever I'm transmitting should be receivable. Because every signal whatever is being transmitted has some set of power is being injected into it. Right?
Right.
So as the data is being traveling on the cable, it could be faded out. The power strength, the signal strength could be faded out.
Right.
So you just need to understand what type of medium on which the communication is going to be happening. So depending on that, you have to make sure that the receiver could receive the data and process it.
Right.
So that's the reason physical layer says that before any two systems could talk to each other, they have to be connected physically.
Right.
Okay, let's try to understand what are the physical connectivities that you will be able to provide. So you have UTP cables and you also have fiber optic and you also have RF. And you also have STP cable as well. Right? So you have
Yes.
unshielded twisted pair, you have shielded twisted pair, you have fiber optic, you also have RF, radio frequency waves. So depending on the type of cable that you will be using, you can determine how long the data could travel. Normally in production scenario, we will be using UTP cable if it is going to be a LAN, and to provide connectivity for the high speed connection, high speed data traffic, we will be taking the help of fiber optic. Right? So depending on the medium, how the data is going to be signaled is also going to be varying. In case of a copper, whether it is going to be an STP or UTP, the signal is going to be converted into an electrical signal so that it can be traveling on the medium.
Right.
Similarly, if in case of a fiber optic, the signaling is going to be in the form of light signals. The data is going to be transmitted in the form of light.
Right.
In case of RF, what is it going to happen? The electrical signals is being converted into radio frequency so that it can travel on open air. Okay. So there are certain points. Sorry.
No. I'm good.
Okay. So depending on the type of connectivity that you will be providing for communication, so the signal is going to be converted into either electrical signal or light signals or radio frequency. So most of the time we will be using most of the time we will be using UTP instead of STP in case of a copper cable. Why is so?
Signal to noise ratio.
There is no signal to noise ratio. Okay, in case of UTP, you might have seen how the UTP and STP is going to be there. Okay, I will show you
It
that.
has like STP the shield on it.
Okay,
Right?
so if I'm going to use, if there is a shield, then obviously it is better to use it, right?
Right.
Then why we are not using it? There is an extra shield. Can you see this one?
Right.
Now why we are not using them? It is better to use STP, right? Okay. Let me give you a point. Your STP, as the name suggests, it's a shielded twisted pair. A shield is going to be there to protect from signal loss.
Right.
Whereas UTP, that shield will be missing. In that case, there is a possibility of signal loss.
Right.
Then why we are not at all worried about this using a shielded twisted pair in LAN? Mostly, We use UTP cables.
Not sure.
Okay. See, first of all, the cost involved in it. STP cables are costly, whereas UTP
Okay.
cables are cheaper. Just because the UTP cables are cheaper, it doesn't mean that we have to use only UTP cables.
Mhm.
So where that signal leak or signal loss is not accepted, only in those places we will be going for STP cables. Especially, let me say, okay, I have an antenna. Okay, let's say that I have an antenna. This antenna is going to be connected to a BTS, something like this. So from here, this is going to be your wireless signals here. Okay. So in turn, this is going to be connected to wired area. Right. So this is where the transmitter or transceiver we can call it as. Now what is that happening? You are receiving the data in the form of your electrical signal, which will be radiated out by this access point, and that radiation is going to be out via this antenna. So I'm just radiating out the signal so that it could be sent through the antenna. So what is that I'm trying to do? And the cable whatever I'm using here should be shielded so that whatever the transmission, whatever the power I'm just going to be using for transmitting or converting this RF signal, sorry, the electrical signal into RF signal, it should go as it is. I'm not expecting any sort of signal loss on this set of cable between the transceiver and the antenna. This is the place we normally go with STP.
Okay.
So rest of the places, like when you're using a switch or when you're using a hub, it is okay to go with the UTP cable itself,
Okay.
right? So STP and UTP, they are typically a twisted pair cable, but the scenario on which it will be used will be different. In case of STP, in case of STP, where do we use it? Where we are not at all expecting any sort of signal loss. So we don't want any sort of signal loss on a cable. By that time, we'll go for STP. If in case of UTP, it is okay, right? So that shield is going to be protecting you from any sort of signal loss. Okay, in either case, it is a copper wire. The data is going to be transmitted in the form of electrical signals. They are typically the cables are known as what? CAT cables. So we have CAT5, CAT6, CAT6E, now we have CAT7 as well. So what is that CAT stands for? Category. It is nothing but category 5, category 6, category 6E and category 7. In all of these things, we have 4 pairs of wires. Sorry. In all of these cables, we have 4 pairs of wire. They are like a combination, something like one main and one neutral. Let's say if I have green as main, you will be having green white as neutral, blue
Right.
blue white, orange orange white, brown brown white. They are in combination. So I have category cables which has 4 pairs of wire, which we normally use it for data communication, and every pair is being identified by their colors, right? Okay. Now my point is, when I have 4 pairs of wire, how many pairs are being used for data transmission?
2.
Okay, so you
Even
have only
transmission.
2 pairs. You have only 2 pairs which will be used for data transmission. Remaining 2 pairs are not being used for data transmission, but you have the choice of using a pair for power over Ethernet, and you could also use a pair for audio specialization.
Okay.
Right? Now my point is, okay, which pair is being used for data transmission? And whatever the pair, they are twisted. Every pair is twisted. Is there any reason behind it?
So they can cancel the effect of interference.
Exactly. So you could avoid this interference when you have a twisted pair. So that's the reason they have been twisted. Okay. Now, how many pairs are being used for data communication? We have only two pairs is being used for data exchange. One pair for transmission and one pair for receiving. Right. So depending on the type of cable or depending on how you are going to be connecting these devices, you have to start thinking of using a different cable altogether. Okay, so there are certain standards, let me say like this, cabling standards 568A and 568B. These are the two different standards we will be using it. Okay, when you take a cable, there will be two ends, right? If you take a cable, there will be two ends into it. If you're going to use both the end as the same standard, it could be 568A and on the other end also I'm going to be using 568A, then we call it as what? A straight cable.
Right.
Similarly, if I use 568B on one end as well as 568B on the other end, that is also called a straight cable. Doesn't matter on what type of standard that you will be using it. Both the end, if you use the same standard, it is called as what? A straight cable. Instead, in one end you use one standard, on the other end you use the other standard, we call it as a cross cable. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
If you use the same standard on both the end of the cable, then we call it as what? Straight cable.
Right.
One end one standard, the other end you use the other standard, then it is known as what? A cross cable. The question is, when do you have to use a straight cable and when do you have to use the cross cable?
Okay.
Okay. When we use similar devices, a PC to PC, a PC is being connected to the other PC, you use straight cable. Okay, if I'm using a switch, the other side is also switch, then I have to use a cross cable.
Cross.
If I'm going to use a similar set of devices, then I have to use cross cable. If I'm connecting two different type of devices, I'm just providing connectivity to the switch for the PC, then I'll be using what? A straight cable.
Straight cable.
Why is so? This is straight cable, this is a cross cable, and this is a cross cable. Why is so?
Not sure.
Okay. Let's say that we will be using a network interface card, right? This network interface card is going to be connected with, okay, I have a jack here, and then that jack, let's say that, and I'll be having a socket. I'll be inserting my RJ45 cable into it. How do I insert it? I'll be using RJ45 jack, right?
Right. Yep.
RJ45. So people used to call this as what? A registered jack of type 45, which has 8 pins into it.
Right.
So 8 pins, 8 wires will be connected and then it could be inserted into the socket of your NIC. Because the NIC again is being made as per the standard. Okay, so you will be having 8 connectors into it, so that the 8 pins will be connected to their appropriate wires. 8 wires are there, 8 pins are there. They will be connected to those 8 pins. Assume that the standard says pin number 1 is meant for transmission. Right? I also have the similar NIC on the other side. I'm trying to connect two different devices, two different PCs. So in that case, what is that happening? Again, these 8 pins are there. Right? If the first pin meant for transmission, on the other side also, the first pin would be meant for what? Transmission only. When I use a straight cable, what is that will happen? First pin will be connected to first pin, second pin will be connected to second pin, third pin will be connected to third pin, like that.
Okay.
So 8 pins are going to be connected respective to each other. First pin of PCA will be connected to first pin of PCB. That's what your straight cable provides. Now, I told you that if the first pin is meant for transmission on one of the device, obviously the first pin of the receiver would also, the other PC will also be meant for what? Transmission. Right? So the transmission pin will be connected to transmission pin, then how come the receiving would happen? Okay, if you're talking over a phone, right? Assume that you are talking over a speaker. What will happen? Or instead of keeping the speaker on air, people are keeping the mic on your air. What will happen? They couldn't hear it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No, can you repeat? Sorry.
Okay. Now let's say that we have, okay, let's say that mouth. Okay. Now earlier days they used to have two different pieces of it on a phone.
Yeah.
Right? Mouthpiece will be there, the mic will be there, speaker will be there.
Right.
Okay. Now let's take this case. Assume that this is your earpiece and this is your mic.
Right.
Right? Now using mic I have to speak. This will go to my ears.
Right.
What if I swap it? I'm going to speak on a speaker. I'm going to keep the mic on my ear. What will happen?
I won't be able to hear.
That's what I'm trying to say. So transmission should be connected to the receiving. Similarly, the transmission of the receiver should be connected to my receiving.
Right.
Okay. So as per the standard, if the NIC says first pin is meant for transmission, on both the PCs, the first pin would be meant for transmission only. If I use a straight cable, transmissions will be connected to transmission.
Right.
So because of that, they couldn't talk to each other.
Right.
So what normally we do when I do connect, let's say this one. In case of a PC or similar kind of a devices, what we normally do is, I would like to keep like this. Assume that the first pin is meant for transmission, and here also it is going to be like a transmission. First pin is meant for transmission. Let's say this is transmission, and this side also it is going to be meant for transmission. Obviously there will be a pin for receiving, right? Let's call one pin here for receiving, and similarly the same pin on the other side is also receiving. So what we are trying to do, we are taking the help of a cross cable. Because of that, the transmission will be connected to receiving. The transmission of other side will be connected to my receiving. So the communication would be possible. So this is the reason we use cross cable when we are trying to communicate with similar set of devices.
Right.
And how come when I'm using dissimilar devices I can use a straight cable? This crossover functionality is implemented internally on these devices. Something
Okay.
like, if the standard says the first pin is meant for transmission, in switches they will use the first pin meant for receiving.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, you could use a straight cable,
Got it.
right? Now it doesn't matter, because of the implementation of MDI MDX, we don't need to worry about what type of cable we are going to be using it. If the device could support this MDI MDX, we could use any cable. They auto negotiate, auto sense, and then they will be using the respective pair for transmission and receiving.
Okay.
In case of a fiber optic, we have single mode and multi-mode.
Multi-mode. Yeah.
So depending on the distance is being covered, we may take single mode or multi-mode.
Right.
And when it comes to RF, RF is also being categorized into two, wireless and WiMAX.
Okay.
Wireless is for shorter coverage, WiMAX is for longer coverage.
Okay.
802.11 is for wireless, 802.16 is meant for WiMAX.
Got it.
That's the IEEE standard for this. 802.3 is for data communication, 802.11 is for wireless, 802.16 is for WiMAX.
Right.
So IEEE standards are helping us to identify what type of technology we are working with. Even you can understand why they have given 802. 802 is the number they have given because the project started in 1980. So 80 in the month of February. So they given number 2. 802 is 1980 in the month of February, and followed by the project number. And then you also have some. I'm sorry.
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Fine. Okay, so we know that 4 pairs of wire and which pair is going to be used being defined in your standard, and what type of cable you will be using is also going to be based on the standard 568A or 568B, and depending on the type of type of devices are being connected, either you may be using a straight cable or you may also be using a cross cable. There is also one more type of cable we used to call, which is known as what? Roll over cable or console cable.
Right.
So what for it is being used? Hope you are aware of it, right?
Yeah.
So the rollover cable is like first pin connected to right. So it is like I have 8 pins or 8 wires. On both the side I have 8 wires. In case of a rollover cable, what we will be using is first will be connected to 8th, second will be connected to 7th. Similarly, this is what we are doing it. This is called as what? A rolled over cable.
Right.
Okay. So this we normally use for communicating with the devices for console connection. Out of the box configuration, we will be taking help of console for doing the configuration of the device. Okay, so this is what the physical layer's responsibility is all about. So what the physical layer says, before any two systems could talk to each other, they have to be connected physically. The connection could be bound or unbound, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Now let's go and try to understand the layer 2, which is data link layer. Okay, so what is the main responsibility of the data link layer?
Like the flow control of the data.
Yes, correct. That is correct. Is that the main responsibility?
Yeah, no, flow control. Okay.
Okay, let me say.
Passing data in and out of on a physical medium.
That is true. That normally we call it as what? Framing.
Right.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what is this? What is this all about? Let's say that In a digital environment, there are two set of communication happening. We normally categorize them as parallel and serial. Right? So if you take, I'm just giving you an example of it. I'm just taking a PC. There will be multiple components internally, right? So I'll be having different cards. I may having some storage space. I have processor. I have multiple devices or multiple components are there on a PC. You are trying to open up an application, or assume that you're opening up a document which is being opened in MS Office or MS Word. So when you're trying to do some changes and you're trying to save it, so there is a possibility that the data is going to be pulled from the memory to, what is it called, the processor. Similarly, once the processing is done, it is going to be saved back to the memory. And all this communication is going to happen in parallel. Okay, just an example. I have two category of processor, right? I have 32-bit processor and 64-bit processor. Now, which one would be faster?
64-bit.
Why?
Just guessing.
Because the number is high?
No, because recently it was introduced, like it was not too long ago, right? So it should be faster processing. 64-bit.
Okay. Let me say like this.
If it is not, then I'll sue them.
I'm sorry?
Saying I will sue them if it is not the case.
Okay. Now, I have a processor. Okay, let's assume that I have a 32-bit processor internally. So, the data can be processed only by the processor. Okay, so now it is going to, I'm just going to ask some application to be opened, or I would like to execute something. The processor needs to be used for processing. So how the data can be pulled? First of all, it has to be available in the main memory. So the data can be pulled only from the main memory, which is nothing but the RAM. Even if you have something in your hard disk, it cannot be directly given to the processor. It has to come to the main memory. From main memory, it can be pulled by the processor. So my point is, the processor can process 32-bit in every time slot if it is a 32-bit processor. And 32-bit of data can be pulled from main memory and then it could be processed. Similarly, if it is a 64-bit processor, on the same interval, this processor can pull 64-bit of data from your main memory and then it could be processed.
Okay.
So which one would be faster? Obviously the 64-bit, because on the same interval it is processing 64-bit, whereas 32-bit processor can process only 32-bit. If at all 64-bit of data needs to be processed by a 32-bit processor, it needs two intervals, whereas 64-bit processor can process it in the same interval.
Right.
So that's why we normally call 64-bit processors are faster.
Okay.
Right. My point is, I was talking about 64 or 32-bit can be parallelly pulled from main memory. And the communication, whatever you use here, or parallel communication. The bus we normally call it as what? PCI bus, right?
Right.
So those are all parallel. The communication can parallelly, the data can be, the bits can be traveling parallelly between these components. It could be 8-bit or 16-bit or 32-bit or 64-bit, it doesn't matter. But they all travel parallelly.
Okay.
Right? Whereas if I connect two devices using a cable, here the communication is serial. It will go one by one. Right?
Right.
So the data has to be converted from parallel to serial. Similarly, from serial to parallel. Often this framing is also known as serialization.
Okay.
So what is that we are trying to do? We are trying to convert a bulk data into a serial signal. It could be transmitted over on the cable.
Got it.
Right? So that is the main responsibility of your data link layer.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Now my point is that the only function of...
flow control, right?
I'm sorry?
That comes under flow control, right?
It may not comes under the flow control. That is little bit different. If you want, I'll explain that later.
Okay.
Yeah. So it is not that this is the only responsibility of your data link layer. Data link layer has two sub layers as well.
Yeah. LLC and MAC.
Exactly. let's say that they have two sublayers into it, right? So the bottom layer is known as what? MAC, and the top layer is known as LLC. So the main responsibility of data link layer is the serialization. Apart from that, it also has two sublayers, and every sublayer is responsible for different functionalities again. Okay, now what is the main functionality of MAC layer? Okay, it provides unique identification of the device on the network.
Okay.
With the help of what?
MAC addresses.
Exactly. But first of all, MAC address, that's what we are trying to say, which is of about 48 bits in length, expressed in hexadecimal format. Okay?
Right.
And they have sliced into equally two parts. So the first part, first 24 bits are called as OUI. Organization Unique Identifier or vendor code. So if at all you are trying to manufacture any of these layer 2 devices, first of all you need to take the help of registering yourself with the IANA so that they will be giving you a vendor code for you. So for every vendor it would be different. For example, if I go there, assume that I'm going there and trying to understand. Okay, nice. Okay, let's go to this. Okay, my network adapters. Can you see this one? Something called as, they are calling it as Intel dual band wireless adapter. I also have Intel Ethernet connection. Can you see this one? How do they give the name as Intel? How do they know? The moment you insert a new network interface card, your PC could recognize who is the vendor. It is going to happen based on the first 24 bits.
Okay.
So by seeing the first 24 bits, you can easily recognize who is the manufacturer of this NIC.
Okay.
So every vendor has to register if at all they are going to manufacture a layer 2 device or even an NIC. For what? For the vendor code. The remaining 24 bits could be anything in which could help us to uniquely identify the device on the network.
Correct.
Okay. So the first 24 bits are called as what? OUI or vendor code. Organization Unique Identifier or VC, vendor code. But moreover, MAC address, whenever I call it as an address, there should be two components into it. Email address, IP address. There are two components into it. In case of an email address, we know that to whom it has to be delivered and which domain he belongs to. If I say gopi@genesis.com is a sender email address, it is being identified as the mail has to be sent to Gopi, who would be available in genesis.com.
Right.
In case of a MAC address, we don't have that kind of differentiation. For whom it has to be delivered, where he is located. Those two informations are not available in MAC address. So typically MAC address supposed to be called as MAC number instead of address. But anyway, it has become a practice to call MAC number as MAC address, MAC address, MAC address. We don't have any problem in that. But actual terminology, what you're supposed to be using is MAC number. It is not MAC address at all.
Got it.
Okay, so but it also has some official name. What is that? The MAC address has some official name. Because these 48 bits are going to be burnt into the circuitry of your NIC, the official name for MAC address is what? BIA.
Yeah.
Burnt in address. And moreover, this also has some other names like what? Layer 2 address, physical address, data link address, right?
Yeah.
So you can use any of these terminologies interchangeably, but the thing is what it is used to identify the device uniquely in a network. That's the main purpose of MAC sublayer. Is there any question?
No.
Okay. Then what would be the main responsibility of LLC sublayer? Logical link control, right? Logical link control. What is the main responsibility of it? Link establishment, link maintenance, and link termination. That means something like that. The moment you plug in a cable into your PC, immediately you can see the network status as up. And you are unplugging it, it comes as what? Down. How this is being recognized? The negotiation is going to happen and try to understand, do we have connectivity to the network or not? The physical connectivity is there or not? So the layer 2 protocol negotiation is succeeded or not? So in that way, the LLC sublayer helps us to establish a link, maintain a link, as well as terminates the link. Also, if you see the LLC, a small portion of your LLC is also available in layer 3. What is that? Why do we have to be having this association? Okay. In case of a physical layer, you cannot have two different techniques connected together. Assuming that one end is my UTP, on the other end I'm going to be using RF, that wouldn't be possible. One end UTP, the other end is going to be my, what is it called, fiber optic. That is also not possible. You may claim that I could use a converter. Even if you use a converter, UTP is going to be terminated to UTP end of a converter, and then fiber optic is going to be converted, right? Anyway, you cannot have two different technologies that could coexist in case of a physical layer. Similarly, in layer 2 also, right? This side Ethernet, the other side is SBA. It's not possible.
Right.
So whatever the type of interface that you are going to be using on one side, the same set of interface you have to use it on the other side, because the technology is going to be the same. Only then they could communicate. Here the point is, in network layer, you can have more than one protocol that could coexist. Assume that I have IP and IPX in my layer 3. Okay. So when the data is being transmitted, it will be coming from layer 7 to layer 1, right? In layer 3, if I use IP to encapsulate the data and then given to layer 2 and then it goes to layer 1, on the receiving side, the first visible layer would be layer 1 and then the second visible layer would be layer 2. And then it has to be handed over to layer 3, where I have more than one person existing. More than one protocol is there. To whom the data has to be handed over? Is that going to be IP or is that going to be IPX? To whom it will be handed over? That binding is what taken care by your LLC.
Okay.
Right? The higher layer binding helps the receiver to identify to which protocol on layer 3 has to be handed over. Right? So logical link control is responsible for establishing the link, maintaining the link, terminating the link, as well as binding with a layer 3 protocol, so that the receiver could understand to which protocol on layer 3 it has to be handed over. If IP is giving the data to data link layer on the sender end, the receiver should hand over the data to IP after the layer 2 has been processed. Does it make sense?
Got it.
Okay.
Yep.
So we know physical layer, data link layer. Okay, so now there are certain things that you need to be understanding. The Ethernet, one of the example what we were talking about is what? Ethernet. Okay. So Ethernet is one of the medium when we use, what is it called, multiple devices to be part of my LAN. In case of a storage, we may be using HBS, host bus adapter. Okay, so now my point is, in case of an Ethernet, there are different categories of Ethernet which are available. They're all being classified as what? Broadcast multi-access network. What I'm trying to mean it is, if someone would like to send data to everyone, whomever is connected to the network, it would be possible. You can send a broadcast. But the point is, they have been classified depending on their speed. We have fast Ethernet, we have Ethernet, we also have fast Ethernet, we also have Gig Ethernet. So we have Ethernet, fast Ethernet and Gig Ethernet. Now how they have been identified? So if the speed is 10 Mbps, we call it as what? Ethernet. If the speed is fast Ethernet, if the speed is 100 Mbps, then we are calling that as what? Fast Ethernet. The speed is 1000 Mbps, then we are calling it as Gig Ethernet. The point is, how do we know that one? Okay, so Ethernet is being identified by their Ethernet identifiers terminology. If it is going to be 10 base T, it is Ethernet. If it is 100 base T, it is fast Ethernet. If it is 1000 base T, it is called as what? Gig Ethernet. But we also had, I can say like that, something like what? In earlier days, we used to have 10 base 2, 10 base 5. We had these things. In case of a bus topology, when we used to use a single cable for making a network connectivity, we were using something called as what? 10 base 2 or 10 base 5. 10 is nothing but the first component says the speed of the medium. If you take any of these Ethernet identifiers, there are three components into it. The first component says the speed of the medium. So whenever you see the 10, it's a numerical number, it's a numerical component. If you see 10 Mbps, 100 Mbps, 1000 Mbps. The second component says the type of communication. Right? So whenever you see as a base stands for what? Baseband. Base stands for baseband.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if you would like to understand what is baseband, let me say an example of it. Okay. Now you have a broadband connection at your home, right? That's how you got connected to internet, and that's how we are communicating each other. What type of internet connection you have at your home?
Broadband.
Okay. So now tell me, what is broadband? Broadband is nothing but the next version of baseband, right? If you know broadband, then obviously you know baseband. If you know baseband, then obviously you know broadband. What is broadband then? Okay.
Not sure.
Okay. Let me give you an example of it. Let's say that in earlier days of internet access, I don't know whether you have that experience or not. If you would like to get connected to the internet, you have to have a telephone connection at home, and then you will be buying the internet connection, and there will be a dialer they will be giving you. You have to install on your machine, and then using the dialer, and you have to connect to the internet. Okay? In that period, if once you are connected to internet, then you will be assuming that you are receiving a call from someone, your internet will be disconnected. Similarly, if someone is taking the receiver, again your internet will be disconnected. You remember those, Sarah?
Right.
Now why is that so? Because they are all operating in a different frequency. And since you can transmit only one frequency, if internet is connected and if you are taking the receiver out and your existing connection needs to be disconnected. Let me say like this, I have a pipe. Okay, I have a pipe. I have a pipe, and this pipe is being sliced. Okay, so now let me say this, in case of a broadband, this pipe is being sliced horizontally into multiple, in every slice a different frequency can travel. Right? So in one frequency you can transmit data, the other frequency you can transmit audio, the other frequency you can transmit the video. Okay, now the most important component of your broadband connection would be your DSL splitter. You can see that connection from your telco is being terminated on one end. On the other end, you will be having 2 points. One is going to be your modem, the other one goes to your phone.
Right.
Now, those are all the 2 different frequencies. So it can easily classify 2 different frequencies and both of them can parallelly travel on the cable. That's what your baseband. So that's what your broadband. In case of a baseband, the same pipe is being sliced vertically. Right? In every slice, again, you can have one type of data. So if it is going to be voice on slice 1, you can have video on slice 2. And the other slice you can have audio. Means the whole bandwidth of the cable is reserved for one type of communication. You have a high bandwidth, but not all this frequency can travel parallelly on the cable. So you are doing some sort of time slicing, and every time slice can have only one set of data. So one type of data. That's what your baseband is all about.
Got it.
Right? So if you take your telephone connection, it is an example of your TDM. Time domain multiplexing or time division multiplexing. Whereas if you take a cable TV or a DTH, whatever it is, multiple frequencies can travel parallelly on the cable. So depending on the receiver that you are tuning to, which frequency you are listening in, which frequency you are interested in listening, so that frequency will be shown to you. That particular channel will be shown to you. We call that as what? FDM, frequency division multiplexing. So multiple frequency can travel parallelly on the cable. So depending on the frequency to which your receiver is tuned for, the particular channel will be shown to you. It doesn't mean that the other frequencies are not being received. It is not being tuned to receive. Those frequencies are there on the cable. Okay. So the third component says on your Ethernet identifier something like what? Either type of cable or max length. The third component says the type of cable or max length. If one is given, the other one is predefined. Right? So if one is given, the other one is predefined. Say for example, when you see 2, here you're seeing 2, right? You're seeing 2 here, right? That means what? It is 185 meters. That means the maximum length of a cable could be 185 meters. In that case, the type of cable is known to us, which is coaxial cable. Right? If you see T stands for twisted pair, where the type of cable is given and maximum length is predefined. So maximum length of a twisted pair is what? 100 meters. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
Okay. So there are 3 components in your Ethernet identifier. The first component says the speed of communication. The second component says the type of communication. The third component says either the type of cable or maximum length. If one is being given, the other one is predefined.
Got it.
Okay. So if you are trying to manufacture a device which could understand the layer 2 information, then we call the device as acting at layer 2. Okay, now we are done with what? Layer 1 and layer 2. I think it is enough for today. I will post this video.
Wow.